This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and here's a logo we know and used to love, right? VAIO is still around. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, VAIO used to be owned by Sony, got sold off. All the engineers and folks who designed it went along to VAIO Corporation, still a Japanese company. We've reviewed a couple of their laptops over the years, and this is the latest that's coming to the United States. It is currently available in Japan. This is the VAIO SX14. It's positioned as a business laptop, but honestly, this is something I think anybody would like, though some of the features are particularly appealing to business. What it is a 14-inch Ultrabook that is incredibly light. This is 2.2 to 2.3 pounds, depending on whether you get the full HD or the 4K display, and that's around a kilogram. So we're talking LG gram territory with a 14-inch display. Yet it's fairly rigid. We have aluminum on the top, we have aluminum on the keyboard deck, and this happens to be the limited edition red finish, which actually goes through a 3-stage process to create this red lid. Pink underneath, then light red, then dark red. It's also available in a limited edition signature kind of matte black that I really like. It's like the VAIOs of old. It's really classy looking. Then there's a silver and there's a brown, which are actually nice looking, even though brown's not always the most popular color. Inside we have Intel 8th generation Whiskey Lake quad-core 15-watt Ultrabook CPU, so that's currently the latest and greatest that's available. Up to 16 gigs of DDR3 low-power RAM, fast NVMe SSD, a backlit keyboard, and your choice of a full HD or a 4K display. We're going to look at it now. So the pricing is in the premium tier, certainly, up there with the Dell XPS 13, nicely configured. Now there's the Core i5 with 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD is around $12.99. Our really nicely configured one with 16 gigs of RAM, a 512 gig SSD, and the 4K display, well, that one is going to set you back $18.99. So a hallmark of a VAIO laptop over the years is that it's super thin and super light, but somehow they managed to squeeze an amazing array of ports on it, which makes it kind of business friendly too. So you have HDMI, full-size ports, not small ones. You have HDMI on board, 3 USB-A 3.1 ports, USB-C. Sadly, it's not Thunderbolt 3, but given the array of ports that are on the machine, it's not so bad. We actually have an Ethernet jack on this skinny laptop. Of course, a headphone jack, you get the idea, a full-size SD card slot, so that makes it pretty unique in today's market, which is nice. The displays are, again, kind of business-facing, but also kind of unique these days, insofar as you can get a full HD or a 4K matte 14-inch display. Really hard to find a matte display anymore. The drawback is it's not touch. If you like a touch screen, oh well, it isn't touch. It ships with Windows 10 Pro, again, sort of business facing there. It has a fingerprint scanner on the keyboard deck. And while the model sold in Japan has LTE 4G as an option, not the United States model, I do hope that they add that, because you'll see when we look inside, there actually is a slot to put the LTE card in there, and the antennas and all that stuff are there. So let's hope, maybe. Business laptop folks tend to like to have LTE. We do have the 4K display on this, and it's a lovely enough panel. The typical almost full sRGB coverage. The other metrics on it are very good. It's very pleasing to look at, subjectively speaking, and the contrast on it's good. It's really nice that it doesn't glare. Brightness on this is not super high, but given the fact that there is no glare, it's a little bit less necessary to have super high brightness. I haven't seen the full HD display in person, but I would expect the same pretty much full sRGB coverage and similar specs on that one, only obviously at a lower resolution. Do you really need 4K in a 14-inch display? Probably not so much, but those of you who are photo and video editors might appreciate having that option. As you might imagine with a laptop this small, basically, the sound is not going to be that, well, big. There's not a lot of bass here. The volume is pretty good, but given the lack of bass, I find anything over 65% volume starting to sound a little bit shrill. Well, not so unusual for the smallest, thinnest, and lightest laptops. The keyboard on this is actually pretty roomy, given the fact that it is a compact 14-inch chassis and relatively small bezels on this model, bringing it into the modern age. There's not a lot of travel here, but it's fairly easy to type on. It has a decent tactile feel, but obviously with these super thin and light laptops, you're not going to get ThinkPad level of key travel. The trackpad on this is Microsoft Precision, and that's great, and it has dedicated clickers. The only drawback is it's pretty small. It looks a little old school. We're used to having really large trackpads these days. In terms of performance, it's like any other Ultrabook with an Intel 8th generation CPU, which is to say quite good. It's remarkable these days what you can do with an Ultrabook with a quad-core 15-watt CPU inside. In terms of fan noise, it has a single fan inside, and you will hear it, probably because it's pretty small, so they really have to work to evacuate that air. It's not super annoying, but I hear it more often than I do on competing products, again, probably due to the size. It's not a really annoying fan. It's not a very big fan, but there that is. The only drawback here is battery. 35 watt hour is pretty small. Usually we see at least 40 watt hour and above for an Ultrabook in this size class. Obviously, they were trying to make this as thin and light as possible. So that's the trade-off, super portability versus longer battery life. And that's up to you as a consumer to make that decision with your dollars. They claim 8 hours of battery life. And as you know, manufacturers in the Windows land tend to really make crazy claims. So that tells you 8 hours isn't a big claim. Real life, this is more like a 5.5 to 6 hour battery life laptop, which does kind of hurt. Obviously, if you drop your brightness down, drop your processor performance down in Windows performance settings, you're going to get longer battery life. So you can stretch it out if you need to, but with our usual productivity and streaming video tests with the brightness set at 150 nits, there it is. So opening this up is a little different than usual. You're going to unscrew. See all these screw holes? A whole lot of little teeny tiny Phillips head screws, of which this is one. And then actually you're going to flip it over and open up the display and lift up the keyboard deck. And now we flipped it over and popped off the little snaps. And you're going to want to, there's a ribbon cable here. So you have to be careful when you lift this up. You can disconnect that ribbon cable if you know what you're doing, by the way, and completely get out of the way. So I'm going to move it out of the way here just so you can see what's inside. So there's our M.2 NVMe SSD, and here's our Wi-Fi card. The battery, obviously, right there. Our cooling fan, our heat pipe. This here is heat shielding. There is no RAM under here. RAM is soldered on board with this laptop. And most interestingly, though we don't have one here, this would be for an LTE module, and you can see the antennas are actually installed right there. So that's the VAIO SX15, and honestly, I'm really glad they continue to do that thing that they do. These incredibly classy looking, very small, very light laptops with an immense number of ports, matte displays, as long as you can live without a touchscreen, are all good things. The lack of Thunderbolt 3 hurts a little bit, not that much. The battery life, not so impressive. That hurts a little bit more, but you do get a lot of great stuff here, though. You get really good performance as you expect from quad-core. You get a very nice display on this. There's a lot to like, too, and gosh darn it, red's kind of nice. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.